Now to a WMBF News investigation, phony fish. Seafood is expensive, and in this economy, every dollar counts.
It really does. Yet by using DNA testing, we found that you don't always get what you pay for.
WMBF News anchor Matthew Norton is live in Myrtle's Inlet with the results of our investigation. Matthew?
Well, Danner, these restaurants like Drunken Jack's here on the Myrtle's Inlet Marsh Walk didn't know that we were coming, and we made sure to use hidden cameras when we sat down for lunch so they wouldn't know we were working on a news story either. What we found was what we ordered and what we got didn't always match. In my hand, the results of a DNA investigation.
I think I'll have the grouper basket.
Bad news for the owner of the restaurant where we ordered grouper and got an entirely different fish. We were wondering if you knew that or if that was a surprise.
That's the first I've heard.
He tells us he didn't know he was actually serving a version of Asian catfish. Some types of Asian catfish tested positive last year in Alabama for high levels of antibiotics, banned by the FDA because they could eventually make it harder for the body to fight off infections. It's even led to restrictions on which fish are allowed into Alabama. In South Carolina, both DHEC and the Department of Natural Resources tell us they don't deal with this issue. But we decided to look into it ourselves. Photojournalist Drew Hansen hid a camera in part of his clothing.
Man, I'm hungry. Let's go eat.
A photographer's dream assignment. And we set off on our culinary quest. Our first stop, River City Cafe in Myrtle's Inlet.
Do you take to-go orders?
We do, yeah.
And it turns out grouper is on the menu.
I'll just put in an order for a grouper sandwich, I think.
Okay.
Once we got back to the car, we made sure to label the box with the number we'd given the restaurant back at the station. In River City Cafe's case, the code number happened to be 2. While in Myrtle's Inlet, we also hit Harrelson Seafood Market.
How are y'all today?
And Drunken Jack's.
It says local grouper. Is it really
It is.
grouper?
Yeah, it is. It comes off our boats out back every day.
Awesome. I'll have the grouper sandwich.
Okay.
Actually, it's unlikely the fish would have come from out there, since when we visited, there was a ban on fishing grouper in our part of the Atlantic. But let's just hope we get real grouper from somewhere. On and on we went, from the Conch Cafe in Garden City with its beautiful view of the ocean and the grouper fingers on the menu, to Mr. Fish in Myrtle Beach, where the waiter assured us we were eating the real thing. We drove north to try the grouper at Isla Mirada, the restaurant next to the Bass Pro Shops.
So they like the grouper here, huh?
Yeah, it's our #1 seller by a long shot.
And we also grabbed samples of grouper from Pier 14 in Myrtle Beach and fillets on the Intracoastal Waterway in North Myrtle. So much fish over so many hours, I never wanted to smell grouper again. But we had to prepare the fish to be sent off to a DNA lab in Florida. From our carefully numbered boxes that corresponded to the code for each restaurant, I cut a tiny piece of grouper and slid it into a test tube. In about a week, the lab sent us the results. 2 of the restaurants had failed. Among them, fillets in North Myrtle Beach. According to the lab, they didn't serve us the grouper we ordered. Instead, they gave us a fish called sushi, also known as swai, or Asian catfish. But why serve swai? That's what we hope to find out. After not getting a response from our phone message and the letter we sent to the restaurant, we showed up at fillets unannounced, DNA test in hand.
It came back as Mekong giant catfish, basically Asian catfish. We were wondering if you knew that or if that was a surprise.
That's the first I've heard. I mean, we buy from several different suppliers, and we're buying grouper as far as I know.
Do you think they mislabeled it or misled you?
I don't have an answer at this point. Like I say, this is the first I've heard. So we put in our orders. We're getting a product. We check it as it comes in according to the box mark. But that's the only answer I've got right now.
So this wasn't intentional on your part?
No.
The other restaurant that failed the DNA test, River City Cafe in Myrtle's Inlet, owned by Divine Dining Group.
I'm Matt Norton from WMBF News.
We also showed up at their headquarters on Huger Street in Myrtle Beach after no one from their company returned our calls or responded to our letter. But we were told no executives were inside. Within about an hour, Divine Dining Group's Director of Operations gave us a call. Darren Lee declined our invitation to explain the DNA results on camera, but he did email us this statement, which says, "The concerns that have been raised have increased our diligence of imported seafood. We are internally investigating this matter with our suppliers, as well as implementing our own DNA certification of imported seafood products to ensure the quality, labeling, and safety meets our high standards." Yet so far, no one has told us why this is is happening? Why are customers and perhaps the restaurant owners themselves not getting the grouper they ordered? We asked the folks at Harrelson Seafood Market, which passed our test, if we could stop by to learn more about the business. After all, they should know a lot about seafood here. One of the owners is Ann Mathis Springs, the famous crab cake lady, and beside me, her grandson, Denny. We wanted to know why someone might give you Asian catfish rather than grouper.
Drastic price difference. It'd all be price-based. You're looking at anywhere from a quarter of the cost, a third of the cost, just depending on how far down the line you can get it. If you can get it straight from the farm, you're getting it at cents on the dollar versus grouper.
On the day we visited last week, he was selling grouper for $15.99 a pound. So buy another kind of fish for around $5 a pound, charge a diner or the restaurant itself for grouper, and you could make quite a profit.
See what the real thing is?
Down the road at Drunken Jack's restaurant, grouper is a signature dish, one the restaurant's reputation is tied to. And our DNA test confirms they're selling the real thing. So what did they do during that recent ban on fishing grouper off the South Carolina coast? They froze some local grouper, but knew it wouldn't last long.
And then we outsourced some from the Gulf and from down near Mexico. But we had to send a lot of fish back that we weren't happy with, too.
If they don't think it's really grouper, or if it's not the kind they want, they say it doesn't make it into the kitchen. They're worried customers would know the difference. But let's face it, a lot of us would be fooled, especially if the fake grouper were fried. That's akin to blasphemy for the man known as Mr. Fish in Myrtle Beach, Ted Hammerman.
No, you don't want to mislabel things. No, you don't want to dupe them. And no, you don't want to be in a situation where, oh, it's a tourist town, they'll come and sit down once and we'll never see them again. Well, that's not the case. I mean, we got to live here too.
No surprise, perhaps, that Mr. Fish was among those who passed our test. In the end, it all comes down to reputation and whom you trust. Harrelson Seafood Market's Denny Springs compares it to the relationship you have with your car mechanic.
If you don't have knowledge of what's wrong with your car, it's up to the honesty of the mechanic to let you know. Same thing with anything. But that's kind of how it is in the seafood business as well. And I think that you'll find the majority of people out there are going to be honest with you and let you know where that fish came from if you ask them.
Let's hope. After all, you're probably not carrying a DNA test with you when you go out to eat.
Now, an investigation by the state of Alabama revealed high levels of an antibiotic called fluoroquinolones in 18 of 40 samples they tested. That drug has been banned in fish by the FDA. They're worried that so much of it over time in the body could hurt you, could basically prevent you from fighting off infections. And we also did a test in Wilmington. Our colleagues up there did a test on 3 restaurants up there. In one case, they also were served Asian catfish. Live in Murrells Inlet, Matthew Norden, WMBF News.